You need to control yourself. Now look at me.
Everything depends on this.
Some stories begin with love at first sight. Elise's began with running for her life, pastries shaking in her hands, and the wrong man calling her name across a glittering hotel lobby. Let me take you back to that night. Elise Navarro had one rule working at the Elysian Crown, the most luxurious hotel in the city: never use the main lobby. Ever. The service corridors existed for a reason. Staff weren't supposed to be seen. Especially not pastry chefs in flour-dusted aprons, carrying trays of delicate macarons and croissants that cost more than most people's weekly salary. But that night, the service elevator was broken. Plumbing disaster on the 4th floor. Water everywhere. And Elise's supervisor looked at her with desperate eyes and said the word she'd been dreading for months. You'll have to go through the main lobby. Elise felt her stomach drop. Because the main lobby wasn't just marble floors and crystal chandeliers. It wasn't just wealthy guests in designer clothes sipping champagne. The main lobby was where he could see her. Brandon Hale. Her ex-fiancé. The man who'd promised her the world, then slowly tried to take away everything she had. The man who showed up at her apartment. Who waited outside her favorite coffee shop. Who sent flowers to her workplace with cards that said things like "I forgive you" and "We're not finished." The man she'd fled across the city to escape. And he stayed at this hotel. Often. Elise gripped the pastry box tighter, her hands trembling slightly as she pushed through the staff door into the blinding elegance of the lobby. The Elysian Crown lobby was breathtaking. Vaulted ceilings. Gold accents everywhere. A fountain in the center that cost more than Elise would earn in 10 years. Beautiful people moved through the space like they owned it. Elise kept her head down, walking quickly toward the guest elevators on the far side. Almost there. Just 20 more feet. Elise. She froze. No. No, no, no. Elise. I knew it was you. Brandon's voice cut through the lobby like a knife. Heads turned. Elise's heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't stop. Didn't look back. She walked faster, the pastry box wobbling in her grip. Elise, don't you dare ignore me. She heard his footsteps behind her. Fast. Angry. She broke into a near run, her cheap work shoes squeaking on the polished marble. 10 feet from the elevator. 5 feet. A hand clamped around her wrist. Brandon spun her around, his face twisted with that familiar mix of charm and cruelty. He was handsome. He'd always been handsome. Tall, athletic. The kind of smile that made people trust him immediately. But Elise knew what lived behind that smile. Running away again, he said, his voice low but venomous. That's disrespectful, Elise. After everything I've done for you. Let go of me, she whispered, her voice shaking. We need to talk. You've been avoiding my calls. Brandon, let go. And I think it's time you stopped acting like a child and came back where you belong. People were staring now. A few guests whispered to each other. Hotel staff shifted uncomfortably but didn't intervene. Because Brandon Hale looked like money. And money, in a place like this, got away with almost anything. Elise yanked her arm, but his grip tightened. You're making a scene, he hissed. You're making a scene, Elise shot back, her fear giving way to a flash of anger. I don't belong to you. I never did. Let go. She twisted her wrist hard and broke free. The pastry box tumbled to the floor. Macarons scattered across the marble like colorful confetti. Elise didn't care. She ran. Behind her, Brandon shouted something, but she didn't hear it. She slammed her hand against the elevator call button, once, twice, 3 times, her breath coming in short gasps. Please. Please open. Please. Ding. The elevator doors slid open. Elise stumbled inside and crashed directly into someone's chest. A solid, immovable chest that smelled like sandalwood, leather, and power. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her before she fell. Easy, a voice said. Deep. Calm. The kind of voice that expected to be obeyed. Elise looked up. And up. The man in the elevator was tall, over 6 feet, with dark hair perfectly styled, a jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Elise's entire year's salary, tailored so precisely it looked painted on. and he was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Curiosity? Amusement? Something darker? I'm sorry, Elise stammered, stepping back. I didn't. Elise. Brandon's voice. Close. Her head whipped toward the lobby. Brandon was pushing through the small crowd, his face red with anger. Panic surged through her. The man in the elevator followed her gaze. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. Something cold. Dangerous. Brandon reached the elevator. Elise, get out here. The man stepped forward, positioning himself between Elise and the doors. He didn't touch her. Didn't even speak. He just looked at Brandon. It was the kind of look that made the temperature drop 10 degrees. Brandon faltered mid-step. His eyes darted to the man, then back to Elise, then to the man again. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. We were just talking, Brandon said, his voice losing some of its edge. The man said nothing. He simply raised one hand and pressed the button inside the elevator. The doors began to slide shut. Wait, Brandon lunged forward. Too late. The doors closed with a soft, final click. Elise stood frozen, her back pressed against the elevator wall, her heart still racing. The enclosed space suddenly felt very small. Very intimate. The man turned to face her fully. Up close, he was even more striking. His features were sharp, aristocratic. There was a small scar along his left eyebrow that somehow made him more attractive, not less. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened, just slightly. Are you all right? He asked. His voice was accented, Italian, Elise thought, and impossibly smooth. Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry, he wouldn't. You don't need to apologize. The man's gaze dropped to her empty hands, then to the floor indicator above the doors. Which floor? Ground floor. The staff exit. He pressed the button. The elevator began to rise. Wait. Rise? Elise blinked. I think you pressed the wrong button. I need to go down. I know, the man said calmly. But first, you'll wait here while I ensure your friend is no longer in the lobby. He's not my friend, Elise said quickly. He's my ex. And she stopped herself. Why was she explaining herself to a stranger? He's persistent, the man finished for her. I gathered. Elise hugged herself, suddenly very aware of her appearance. Her apron was stained. Her hair was falling out of its bun. She probably smelled like sugar and sweat. And this man looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. I'm sorry, she said again, for crashing into you. For all of this. Stop apologizing. It wasn't harsh, but it was firm. Final. You did nothing wrong. The elevator slowed, then stopped. The penthouse level. Of course. The man pulled out his phone and made a brief call. Nico. Main lobby. There's a man harassing one of our staff. Tall, brown hair, expensive watch, thinks he owns the place. Escort him out. Permanently. A pause. I don't care if he's a guest. Ban him. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket, all without breaking eye contact with Elise. Who are you? She asked quietly. For the first time, the corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. Something more knowing. Matteo Ricci, he said. I own this hotel. Elisa's breath caught. Oh God. She'd heard the name. Everyone who worked at the Elysian Crown had heard the name. Matteo Ricci, the reclusive owner who supposedly ran not just the hotel, but half the city's high-end real estate. Matteo Ricci, who had rumors swirling around him like smoke. Dangerous rumors. Organized crime. Political connections. People who crossed him, disappeared. But none of the rumors mentioned how devastatingly handsome he was. Or how utterly terrifying. I work in the pastry kitchen, Elise said stupidly, as if he couldn't tell. I know. Her eyes widened. You know? I know everyone who works in my hotel, miss. Navarro. Elise Navarro. Elise. He said her name like he was tasting it. You make the chocolate soufflés. She blinked. You've had my soufflés? Every week. Elise didn't know what to say to that. The elevator began descending again, smooth and silent. Your ex-fiancé, Matteo said, his tone conversational but his eyes sharp. How long has he been bothering you? Why do you want to know? Because I don't allow harassment in my hotel. And because... He paused, studying her face. You look like someone who's been running for a long time. Elisa's throat tightened. She looked away. 6 months, she admitted quietly. Since I broke off the engagement. He won't accept it. He shows up. Sends things. Calls from different numbers. I thought moving across the city would help, but... He found you. He always finds me. Something dark flickered across Matteo's face. The elevator slowed. Ground floor. But it didn't open immediately. Matteo pressed the stop button, holding them in place. Elisa's pulse jumped. I can make him stop, Matteo said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. How? Elise whispered. Matteo's expression was unreadable. Do you really want to know? No. Yes. Maybe. I don't want anyone to get hurt. Hurt. Matteo tilted his head slightly. I was thinking more along the lines of a legal cease and desist. Restraining order. Perhaps a call to his employer about his behavior. He paused. Unless you'd prefer something more permanent. The way he said permanent made Elisa's skin prickle. I just want him to leave me alone, she said. Then he will. Matteo released the stop button. The elevator resumed its descent. As the doors opened to reveal the staff corridor, empty thankfully, Matteo reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black card. He held it out to her. Elise took it slowly. It was matte black, elegant, with silver embossing. Just a phone number. Nothing else. If he contacts you again, Matteo said, call me. Immediately. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. The doors began to close. Elise stepped out quickly, clutching the card. Why? She called, before the doors could shut completely. Why would you help me? Matteo held her gaze. Because no one should have to run, Elise. Especially not in my hotel. The doors closed. Elise stood alone in the corridor, staring at the black card in her hand, her heart pounding for an entirely different reason now. That night, Elise couldn't sleep. She lay in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, turning that black card over and over in her fingers. She should throw it away. She should forget the whole thing happened. But she didn't. Instead, at 2 a.m, she did something she'd sworn she wouldn't do. She Googled him. Matteo Ricci. And what she found made her blood run cold. Articles about his family's real estate empire. Luxury hotels, casinos, high-rise developments. Legitimate businesses, all of them. On the surface. But the deeper she scrolled, the darker it got. Allegations of money laundering. Whispers about organized crime connections. A journalist who'd written an exposé about the Ricci family had disappeared 3 years ago. Never found. One forum thread, buried deep, simply said, "Don't cross the Riccis. People who do don't get second chances." Elisa's hands shook as she closed her laptop. This was insane. She just accepted help from a man who might be one of the most dangerous people in the city. She should block the number. Forget this ever happened. But she didn't. She saved it instead. Under one name, Matteo. 3 days passed. 3 days of Elise jumping at every shadow, checking over her shoulder, expecting Brandon to appear. But he didn't. No calls. No flowers. No surprise visits. It was like he'd vanished. On the 4th day, Elisa's phone rang. Unknown number. But somehow, she knew exactly who it was. Her finger hovered over the answer button. This was a choice. A line she could cross or step back from. If she answered this call, something told her, her life would never be the same. Elise closed her eyes. And pressed accept. Hello? Elise. Matteo's voice, smooth and certain. I hope I'm not interrupting. No, I know. Good. I'd like to invite you to dinner. Her heart skipped. Dinner. Tomorrow night. My home. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. This was insane. She barely knew this man. Everything she'd read about him screamed danger. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "What time?" She could hear the smile in his voice. "I'll send a car at 7. Wear something comfortable. This is a conversation, Elise. Not a performance." The line went dead. Elise stared at her phone, her reflection ghostly in the black screen. What had she just agreed to? But Elise didn't know this yet, couldn't know it as she stood in her tiny apartment, heart racing, phone clutched in her trembling hand. That the elevator ride had been the easy part. That the real danger was just beginning. And that tomorrow night, Matteo Ricci would make her an offer that would change everything. Because sometimes, the most dangerous deals are the ones we make to save ourselves. And Elise was about to learn that Matteo Ricci never made an offer he didn't intend to keep. Wait, before we jump deep into the story, can I be real with you for a second? I made a bet with my mom that this channel would hit 1,000 subscribers before my birthday. And right now, I'm watching the view count go up on this video, but the subscriber count is moving way slower. Here's the thing, if you're still here after part 1, if you're invested in Elise's story, if you're wondering what Matteo's going to offer her at that dinner, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is for. So do me a favor? Hit that subscribe button right now. Before you forget. Before you move on to the next video. Because I promise you, the action is where things get really interesting. And if you subscribe now, you won't miss when I drop the next story. Or the one after that. Plus, you'll be helping me prove my mom wrong. And honestly, that's the best birthday gift I could ask for. Okay, my subscriber. Let's get back to the story. Because Matteo's about to make Elise an offer she can't refuse. She thought being stuck in an elevator with a mafia kingpin was the worst thing that could happen. But Elise had no idea that Matteo already knew her name. Let me tell you what happened in those 7 minutes. Because 7 minutes can change everything. When the elevator jolted to a stop, Elise's first thought was, "This is how I die." Not from Brandon's stalking. Not from heartbreak. But from a mechanical failure in a luxury hotel elevator with a man who probably had bodies buried under his penthouse. The lights flickered, then steadied into emergency mode, dim, amber, casting shadows that made Matteo's already sharp features look almost predatory. "Don't panic," he said calmly, as if people got trapped in elevators with him all the time. Maybe they did. Elise's back was pressed against the wall, her breathing shallow. The space suddenly felt impossibly small. Matteo took up so much of it, not just physically, but energetically. Like gravity bent toward him. He pulled out his phone. "Nico. We're stuck in elevator 3. Get maintenance here. Now." A pause. "I don't care if it takes 5 minutes or 5 hours. Get it done." He hung up and looked at Elise. "They'll have us out soon." "Okay," Elise whispered. She hugged herself tighter, suddenly very aware that she was alone, in a stopped elevator, with a man who, if the internet was to be believed, could make people disappear with a phone call. But he'd also just saved her from Brandon. Matteo leaned against the opposite wall, giving her space. "Your ex-fiancé," he said quietly. "Brandon Hale. How long were you together?" Elise's head snapped up. "How do you know his full name?" "I had my security check him out after the incident." You investigated him?" "I investigate everyone who causes problems in my hotel." His dark eyes held hers. "And everyone who interests me." The way he said, "interests me," made her skin tingle. 3 years, Elise said finally. "We were together 3 years. Engaged for 6 months. What made you leave?" It was a simple question, but the answer was anything but. Elise looked down at her hands. "He loved me," she said slowly. "At least, I thought he did. But his version of love felt like drowning. He wanted to know where I was every second. Who I talked to. What I wore. He'd show up unannounced and call it romantic. He'd buy me expensive gifts and act like I owed him something in return." Her voice got quieter. "And when I tried to set boundaries, he'd flip it. Tell me I was ungrateful. That no one else would put up with me. That I was lucky he loved me despite my flaws." Mateo's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Just listened. The final straw was when he told me I needed to quit my job at the pastry kitchen. Said it was beneath me. Beneath him. That if we got married, I'd be his wife, not some baker girl. Elise laughed bitterly. Baking is the only thing I've ever been good at. The only thing that's ever been truly mine. And he wanted to take it away. So you left, Mateo said. So I ran. Elise met his eyes. I broke off the engagement, moved across the city, blocked his number, blocked his email, blocked him on everything. I thought that would be enough. But men like Brandon don't accept rejection. No, Elise whispered. They don't. Silence filled the elevator. Then Mateo spoke again, his voice softer than before. What would you do, Elise, if you could do anything? If money and fear weren't factors, what would your life look like? The question surprised her. I'd have my own bakery, she said slowly. Something small. Cozy. The kind of place where people come for the croissants, but stay for the coffee and conversation. I'd create my own recipes. Host baking classes for kids on weekends. Maybe, she stopped, feeling foolish. Maybe what? Maybe I'd finally feel like I built something that was mine. That no one could take away. Mateo studied her for a long moment. You will, he said simply. How can you be so sure? Because you're still here, Elise. Despite everything he put you through, you're still standing. Still dreaming. That's not weakness. That's steel wrapped in softness. Her breath caught. No one had ever described her that way before. Mateo pushed off the wall slowly, moving closer but still keeping distance. I meant what I said earlier. I can make Brandon stop. You already did. He hasn't contacted me in days. Because I had him banned from the hotel and warned that any further harassment would have consequences. Mateo's expression darkened. But that won't stop him forever. Men like him don't give up. They escalate. Fear flickered through her. What are you saying? I'm saying you have options. Mateo's gaze held hers, intense and unwavering. Legal options. Restraining orders. Documented harassment claims. I have lawyers who can bury him in paperwork. He paused. Or I have other options. Permanent ones. There it was again. That word. Permanent. What kind of permanent? Elise whispered. Mateo tilted his head slightly. Do you really want to know? She should say no. Should back away from whatever darkness he was offering. But a part of her, the part that was so tired of running, so tired of being afraid, whispered, yes. Before she could answer, the elevator lurched. The lights flickered back to full brightness. The car began moving again, smooth and steady, descending toward the ground floor. Mateo stepped back, giving her space as the doors opened. Standing in the hallway was a man built like a wall, 6'5", broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and a scar across his neck. He wore an earpiece and a suit that barely contained his muscles. Boss, the man said, his voice a deep rumble. Maintenance cleared it. Won't happen again. Good. Mateo turned to Elise. This is Nico, head of security. He'll escort you safely to your exit. Elise nodded numbly, stepping out of the elevator. But as she moved past Mateo, he caught her arm, gently, nothing like Brandon's grip. His touch was warm through her sleeve. Elise. She looked up. He reached into his jacket and pulled out that black card again, the one he'd given her days ago. I meant what I said. If Brandon contacts you, if you feel unsafe, if you need anything. He pressed the card into her palm, his fingers lingering for just a moment. Call me. Why are you doing this? She asked again. You don't even know me. Something flickered in Mateo's eyes. Something almost like vulnerability. Maybe I want to, he said quietly. And then he stepped back into the elevator, the doors closing between them. Elise stood frozen, the card warm in her hand, Nico waiting patiently beside her. That night, Elise couldn't stop thinking about him. About the way he'd listened when she talked about her dreams. About the darkness in his eyes when he'd said permanent. About the fact that Matteo Ricci, a man who supposedly owned half the city, had looked at her like she mattered. She knew it was dangerous to think about him. She knew she should forget the whole thing. But at midnight, she pulled out her laptop and searched his name again. This time, she went deeper. Past the real estate articles. Past the business acquisitions. She found the crime forums. The conspiracy threads. The whispered stories about the Ricci family's rise to power. One post caught her eye. "My cousin worked for the Riccis. Said Matteo isn't like his father. He's colder. More calculated. His father used fear. Matteo uses silence. You never see him coming. And by the time you realize you've crossed him, it's already too late." Another. 3 people have disappeared in the last 5 years. All had one thing in common. They threatened Matteo's business interests. Police investigated. Found nothing. Not even bodies. Elisa's hands shook as she closed the laptop. This was insane. She should delete his number. Block it. Run in the opposite direction. But she didn't. Instead, she saved it in her phone under a single name, Matteo. And she fell asleep with the black card on her nightstand, its silver numbers catching the moonlight. 3 days of silence. 3 days of jumping at every sound, expecting Brandon to appear. But he didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't show up at her apartment or her work. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. On the 4th day, Elise was decorating a wedding cake in the kitchen when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart stopped. She almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail. But something, instinct, curiosity, fate, made her swipe to accept. "Hello? Elise." Matteo's voice poured through the phone like dark honey. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Her hands stilled on the piping bag. "No, I'm just working." "Good. I have a question for you." "Okay. Are you free tomorrow night?" Elisa's breath caught. "Why?" "I'd like to invite you to dinner. At my home. There's something I want to discuss with you." Red flags. Red flags everywhere. A man she barely knew. A man with dangerous connections. Inviting her to his home. Every rational part of her brain screamed, "Say no." But what came out of her mouth was, "What time?" She could hear the smile in his voice. "I'll send a car at 7. Wear something comfortable, Elise. This isn't a performance. It's a conversation." "About what?" "About your future. And a proposition I think you'll find interesting." He hung up before she could respond. Elise stared at her phone, her reflection ghostly in the black screen. What have I just agreed to? The next day crawled by in slow motion. Elise tried to focus on work, but her mind kept drifting to Matteo. To his voice. To the way he'd looked at her in that elevator like she was something precious. Like she was worth protecting. No one had looked at her that way in a long time. At 6:30, Elise stood in front of her tiny closet, panicking. "Wear something comfortable," he'd said. But what did comfortable mean to a man who wore custom suits and owned luxury hotels? She finally settled on a simple black dress, nothing fancy, but clean and presentable, and minimal makeup. If this was a mistake, she'd at least make it on her own terms. At exactly 7 o'clock, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your car has arrived." Nico. Elise looked out her window. A sleek black Mercedes waited at the curb. Nico stood beside it, scanning the street with professional alertness. This was real. This was happening. Elise grabbed her purse and headed downstairs before she could change her mind. The drive to Matteo's home took 20 minutes. Nico didn't speak, but he wasn't cold, just professional. Focused. They left the bustling city center and entered an exclusive neighborhood Elise had only seen in magazines. Gated estates. Manicured lawns. Old money and new secrets. The car turned through iron gates and up a long tree-lined driveway. And then Elise saw it. Matteo's home. It wasn't a house. It was an estate. A modern architectural masterpiece of glass, stone, and clean lines. Lights glowed warm from the windows. A fountain sparkled in the circular drive. "Oh God, what am I doing here?" Nico opened her door. "Miss Navarro. Mr. Ricci is waiting." Elise stepped out on shaky legs. The front door opened before she reached it, and there stood Matteo. He changed since she'd last seen him, dressed more casually now in dark slacks and a fitted black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. It should have made him look more approachable. It didn't. If anything, it made him more dangerous. More real. "Elise," he said, his voice warm. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." A small smile touched his lips. "Come in." He stepped aside, and Elise entered a world that felt like stepping into a dream. The interior was stunning. Minimalist but warm. Expensive art on the walls. Soft lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. But what struck her most was that it felt lived in. Not like a showroom. There were books on the shelves. A half-finished chess game on a side table. Fresh flowers in a vase. "This way," Matteo said, guiding her through the house with a hand that hovered near but didn't touch her back. He led her to a dining room where a table was set for two. Not formal, intimate. Candles. Wine. Simple, elegant. And the smell. "You cooked?" Elise asked, surprised. Matteo pulled out her chair. "I had help from my chef. But yes. I thought you might appreciate a home-cooked meal rather than restaurant formality." Elise sat slowly, her mind spinning. Matteo moved to the other side of the table, pouring wine into her glass before his own. "I should confess something," he said as he sat. "I have an ulterior motive for inviting you here." Her heart skipped. What kind of motive? His dark eyes met hers. "I want to make you an offer, Elise. One I think will solve both our problems." "I didn't know you had problems." "Everyone has problems." Matteo leaned back, studying her. "Mine is that I need someone by my side. Someone intelligent. Someone real. Someone who isn't interested in my money or my reputation." Elise's throat went dry. "I don't understand." "And your problem," Matteo continued, "is Brandon. And safety. And the dream of owning your own bakery." He was right. All of it. "What are you proposing?" she asked carefully. Matteo's expression was unreadable. "I'm proposing that for the next 6 months, you become my girlfriend. Publicly. You move into this house, under my protection. You attend events with me. Play the part." Elisa's mind reeled. Play the part? Like fake dating? Exactly like that. Why would you need a fake girlfriend? Something dark flickered across Matteo's face. "Because in my world, being seen as untouchable is a weakness. Having someone by my side, someone real, someone people can see I care about, sends a message. It says I have something to lose. Something to protect. And what do I get out of this?" Elise asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Matteo leaned forward. "Brandon will never touch you again. I guarantee it. You'll live here, completely safe, with full security. And when our 6 months are up..." He paused. "I'll help you open your bakery. Location, equipment, funding, whatever you need." Elisa's breath caught. It was everything she wanted. And absolutely terrifying. "There must be a catch," she said. "The catch is that you'll be associated with me. My world isn't easy, Elise. There are dangers. Expectations. People who will judge you, fear you, try to use you to get to me. And after 6 months? After 6 months, you're free. The bakery is yours. The arrangement ends. You walk away with everything you dreamed of." Too good to be true. It had to be. "Why me?" Elise asked. "You could have anyone." Matteo's gaze intensified. "Because when you crashed into me in that elevator, terrified and running, you didn't see a monster. You saw a person. And when I offered help, you didn't ask what it would cost you. You just wanted your ex to stop hurting you." He stood, moving around the table slowly. "I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who want something from me. Power. Money. Protection. Favors." He stopped beside her chair, looking down at her. "You're the first person in years who looked at me and just wanted to breathe." Elisa's heart hammered. "This is insane," she whispered. "Yes," Matteo agreed. "It is. I should say no. You should. But you think I'll say yes? His lips curved slightly. I think you're tired of running, Elise, and I'm offering you a way to stop. She looked up at him, this dangerous, beautiful man who was offering her safety, freedom, and her dreams wrapped in a 6-month deal. I need time to think, she said. Of course. Matteo returned to his seat. Take all the time you need, but while you're thinking. He gestured to the food. Eat. You look like you haven't had a real meal in days. And despite everything, the danger, the insanity, the fact that she was sitting in a mansion with a man who might be a criminal, Elise found herself smiling. Because he was right. She was tired of running. And maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to stop. That night, Elise sat in her apartment and called the one person she trusted. Kayla. Her best friend since culinary school. You did what? Kayla shrieked through the phone. I had dinner with him. With Matteo Ricci? The Matteo Ricci? The one with the murder rumors. They're just rumors. Elise, people don't get murder rumors for no reason. Elise sighed. He offered me a deal. She explained everything. The fake dating. The 6 months. The bakery. Kayla was silent for a long moment. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard, she finally said. I know. And you're actually considering it? I don't know. Maybe. Elise. Kayla's voice softened. I love you. You're my best friend. But you have to be smart about this. What if he's dangerous? What if he's not? And what if he is? Elise closed her eyes. Then at least I'll have 6 months where Brandon can't hurt me. 6 months of feeling safe. And maybe a bakery at the end of it. Or maybe you'll end up as another crime statistic. But even as Kayla said it, Elise knew her decision was already made. Because the truth was, she was drowning. Had been drowning for months. And Matteo Ricci was offering her a lifeline. It might pull her to safety. Or drag her down to somewhere darker. But at least she'd finally stop treading water. The next morning, Elise picked up her phone. Her finger hovered over Matteo's number. One text. That's all it would take. Yes or no. Safety or uncertainty. Dreams or reality. She thought about Brandon's face. His grip on her wrist. The fear that had become her constant companion. She thought about the empty bank account where her bakery fund should be. She thought about Matteo's dark eyes and the way he'd said, "You're steel wrapped in softness." Elise took a deep breath. And typed one word. Yes. She hit send before she could change her mind. The response came in less than 30 seconds. Nico will arrive tomorrow at 9 a.m. to help you pack. Welcome home, Elise. Elise stared at the screen. Welcome home. What had she just done? The next morning, at exactly 9 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. Nico stood there with 2 other security personnel and a professional moving crew. Miss Navarro, he said with a slight nod. Mr. Ricci sent us to assist with your move. Elise looked at the small apartment she'd called home for the past 6 months. The place she'd run to when she'd fled Brandon. It had never really felt safe. But Matteo's home. She didn't know if it would be safe either. But it would be different. And different, right now, felt like everything. Okay, Elise said softly. Let's do this. But Elise couldn't know, as she packed her life into boxes and climbed into Nico's Mercedes, that this arrangement, this fake relationship, was about to become the most real thing either of them had ever felt. And someone else was watching. Someone with cold blue eyes and a snake smile. Someone who saw Elise not as a person, but as a weapon to be used against Matteo Ricci. And the war Elise didn't see coming was already beginning. Matteo Ricci didn't ask for dinner. Matteo Ricci commanded it. And Elise walked straight into the lion's den wearing her cheapest dress. But tonight wasn't about the dress. Tonight was about the deal. And Elise was about to learn that with Matteo Ricci, every deal came with fine print written in shadows. Let me take you back to the moment everything changed. The car ride to Matteo's townhouse felt longer than it was. Elise sat in the back of Nico's Mercedes, hands folded in her lap, stomach doing nervous flips. Through the tinted windows, She watched the city transform from familiar streets to exclusive neighborhoods she'd only ever seen in lifestyle magazines. Tree-lined avenues, historic brownstones, iron gates guarding old money and new secrets. The car slowed, turning through a private entrance, tall gates that opened automatically, as if they'd been expecting her. They had been. Mateo's townhouse rose before her like something from a movie. Classic architecture with modern renovations. Warm light glowing from tall windows. A small courtyard garden, meticulously maintained. Beautiful, elegant, and absolutely terrifying. "Miss Navarro," Nico said from the front seat, his deep voice pulling her from her thoughts. "Mr. Ricci asked me to tell you that you can leave at any time. Just say the word, and I'll drive you home. No questions asked." Elise looked at the back of his bald head. "He told you to say that?" "He did." Something in her chest loosened slightly. Mateo was giving her an out. "Even now." "Thank you, Nico," she said softly. "But I'm okay. For now." Nico nodded once and opened her door. Elise stepped out into the cool evening air, clutching her small purse like a lifeline. She'd changed 3 times before settling on a simple black dress. Nothing fancy, nothing revealing, just clean and presentable. Looking at the townhouse now, she felt impossibly underdressed. The front door opened before she could knock. And there he was. Matteo Ricci, wearing dark slacks and a charcoal button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows in a way that should have looked casual but somehow made him more imposing. His dark hair was slightly tousled, like he'd run his hands through it. His sharp features were softer in the warm light, but his eyes, those impossibly dark eyes, were as intense as ever. "Elise," he said, and her name in his accented voice sent a shiver down her spine. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." He stepped aside, gesturing her in. "Please." Elise crossed the threshold and entered a world that felt both foreign and strangely welcoming. The interior was stunning. High ceilings, original molding, hardwood floors that gleamed. Expensive art on the walls, real pieces, not prints. But unlike what she'd expected, it didn't feel like a museum. There were books everywhere. A worn leather jacket draped over a chair. A coffee mug on the side table with the faint ring of use. Fresh flowers in a simple vase. It felt lived in, human. "This way," Matteo said, his hand hovering near but not touching her lower back as he guided her through the house. They passed a study filled with books, a living room with comfortable furniture, and then entered a dining room that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. A table was set for 2, not formal, but intimate. Candles flickered softly. 2 wine glasses waited, empty. And the smell. "You cooked?" Elise asked, surprised. Matteo pulled out her chair with old-world courtesy. "With assistance from my chef. But yes, I thought you might prefer this to a restaurant. More private." Elise sat, hyper-aware of how close he was as he pushed her chair in. She could smell his cologne, something dark and sophisticated that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He moved to his own seat, his movements unhurried and precise. "Wine?" he asked. "Yes, please." He poured a red that looked expensive. Elise took a small sip. It was smooth, complex, probably worth more than she wanted to know. "It's good," she said. "It should be. It's from my family's vineyard in Tuscany." Of course it was. Matteo sat back, studying her with that unreadable expression. "You're nervous." It wasn't a question. "A little," Elise admitted. "Why?" "Because I'm having dinner with a man I barely know. In his home. After he offered me a deal that sounds too good to be true." His lips curved slightly. "Fair enough." A moment of silence. Then Matteo leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "Let me be direct, Elise. I don't believe in wasting time, and I don't believe in games. So I'm going to tell you exactly why you're here, and exactly what I'm offering. And then you're going to make a decision." Elise's heart thudded. "Okay." "Your ex-fiancé, Brandon Hale. He's not going to stop." The blunt statement hit her like cold water. "You said you had him banned from the hotel." "I did. And I've had my security monitoring him since our encounter. Do you want to know what we found?" Elisa's throat tightened. What? He's escalating. He's been asking your co-workers about you. He tried to follow you home last Tuesday. Nico intercepted him. He's called your phone 47 times from different numbers. You haven't answered, which is smart. But he's not giving up, Elise. He's getting more desperate. Fear coiled in her stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying that a restraining order won't stop him. Police intervention won't stop him. Men like Brandon don't respect authority. They respect power. Mateo's gaze intensified. And the only way to stop him permanently is to make him understand that you're untouchable. How do I become untouchable? You become mine. The word hung in the air between them. Yours, Elise repeated slowly. Publicly, Mateo clarified. Not in reality. But to the world, including Brandon, you become Mateo Ricci's girlfriend. And trust me, Elise, no one with any sense crosses me. There it was. The offer. Laid out plainly. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend, Elise said. For 6 months. Why 6 months? Long enough to be convincing. Short enough to be temporary. Mateo paused. And long enough for Brandon to move on and find someone else to obsess over. Elise took another sip of wine, trying to steady her racing thoughts. And what do you get out of this? Honestly. Please. Mateo's expression shifted, something almost vulnerable crossing his features. In my world, being seen as cold, untouchable alone, it's both an asset and a liability. People fear me, yes. But fear also makes them desperate. Unpredictable. He stood, walking to the window, his back to her. If I'm seen with someone real, someone people can tell I care about, it humanizes me. Makes my enemies think twice before making moves that might, collateral damage. You're saying you want me as a shield, Elise said quietly. Mateo turned to face her. I'm saying I want you as a partner. Someone by my side who isn't there for money or power or status. Someone genuine. But it's fake. The arrangement is fake. But the protection is real. The safety is real. And the benefits you receive are real. Elise set down her wine glass. What benefits? Mateo returned to the table, sitting down and looking at her with complete focus. 1. You move into this house. Full security. Nico and his team become your personal protection. Brandon won't be able to get within 100 yards of you. 2. You'll attend social events with me. Galas, dinners, gallery openings. You'll be dressed appropriately. I have a stylist who will help. You'll be compensated for your time. 3. When the 6 months are over, I will help you open your bakery. Location scouting, equipment, licenses, funding, whatever you need. The bakery will be yours, completely. No strings attached. Elisa's breath caught. Her bakery. The dream she'd been saving for, penny by penny, for 5 years. You're serious, she whispered. I don't joke about business, Elise. And make no mistake, this is business. What are the rules? Mateo tilted his head slightly. Rules. If I agree to this, what are you expecting from me? What are the boundaries? A flicker of approval crossed his face. Smart question. Here are the terms. You live here, but you have your own bedroom, your own space. I will never enter without permission. In public, we'll behave as a couple hand-holding, occasional displays of affection, but nothing you're uncomfortable with. You set the limits. In private, we're business partners. Respectful. Professional. You're free to continue working at the hotel if you want, or you can take a leave. Your choice. And if at any point you want out, you tell me, and the arrangement ends. No penalties. Though the full benefits, including the bakery, only come if you complete the 6 months. Elisa's mind spun. It was insane. Completely insane. But it was also everything she needed. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Why me? Really? You could hire an actress. Find someone who's used to your world. Why a pastry chef you barely know? Mateo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because when you crashed into me in that elevator, terrified and shaking, The first thing you did wasn't ask who I was or what I could do for you. You apologized for crashing into me. He leaned forward. Every person I meet wants something, Elise. Money, power, access, protection. They see me as a tool, a weapon, a stepping stone. But you. His voice softened. You saw a person. And when I offered help, you hesitated because you didn't want to owe me anything. That kind of integrity is rare in my world. Precious, even. Elisa's throat tightened. I'm still scared, she admitted. You should be. What I'm offering isn't without risk. My enemies might see you as a target. My world is complicated, dangerous, full of people who play games with lives instead of chess pieces. Then why would I say yes? Because the alternative is worse. Mateo's gaze held hers. The alternative is staying afraid, running forever, letting Brandon control your life even after you've left him, never getting the bakery you dream about because you're too busy surviving to build anything. He wasn't wrong. God, he wasn't wrong. I need to think about it, Elise said. Of course. Mateo gestured to the food that had been waiting. But first, eat. You look like you haven't had a real meal in days. He wasn't wrong about that either. The food was incredible. Homemade pasta with a sauce that tasted like sunshine and summer. Fresh bread. A salad with ingredients Elise couldn't even name. And Mateo was surprisingly easy to talk to. He asked about her childhood, her culinary training, her favorite desserts to make. He listened when she talked about the science of baking, the precision required, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful and delicious. And when she asked about him, he answered honestly. My father built this empire, Mateo said, refilling her wine. Hotels, casinos, real estate. All legitimate on paper. But the foundation was built on less legitimate means. Organized crime, Elise said quietly, among other things. Mateo didn't flinch from the truth. He was a hard man, ruthless, brilliant, but cruel. When I took over 10 years ago, I made a choice to transition everything to legitimate business. It wasn't easy. It made me enemies. But it was necessary. Do people still think you're... Elise trailed off. A criminal? Yes. And I won't lie to you, Elise. Some of my business methods are aggressive. Ethically gray. But I don't hurt innocent people. I don't traffic in the things my father did. I'm trying to build something different. Why are you telling me this? Because if you agree to this arrangement, you deserve to know the truth. Not rumors. Not speculation. The actual truth. Elise studied him across the candlelight. This man who could probably destroy lives with a phone call. This man who was offering her safety and dreams. This man who looked at her like she mattered. I'll think about it, she said again. That's all I ask. After dinner, Mateo walked her to the door where Nico was waiting. Whatever you decide, Mateo said, the offer to help with Brandon stands. You don't have to agree to the arrangement to accept my protection. Why? Elise asked. Why help me if I say no? Mateo smiled slightly, a real smile, not the calculated expression she'd seen in public. Because you deserve to feel safe, Elise. Regardless of whether it benefits me. And that, more than anything else, is what made up her mind. That night, Elise called Kayla. You're insane, her friend said flatly after Elise explained everything. This is the most insane thing I've ever heard. I know. He could be lying about everything. He could be. You could get hurt. Or worse. I could. But you're going to say yes anyway, aren't you? Elise closed her eyes. I think I am. Kayla was quiet for a long moment. Just promise me something. What? Promise me you'll be careful. And if anything feels wrong, you'll get out. I promise. And Elise. Yeah. Text me every day. Morning and night. So I know you're okay. I will. After they hung up, Elise sat in her tiny apartment and looked at her phone. At Mateo's number. At the choice that would change everything. She thought about Brandon's face. His grip on her wrist. The years she'd spent afraid. She thought about the empty savings account, the dream that kept getting further away. She thought about Matteo's dark eyes and the way he'd said, "You deserve to feel safe." Elise took a deep breath and typed, "Yes, I'm in." She hit send before she could change her mind. The response came almost immediately. "Welcome home, Elise. Nico will arrive tomorrow at 9 a.m. to help you move. Sleep well." Elise stared at the screen. Welcome home. What had she just done? The next morning, at exactly 9 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. Nico stood there with 2 other security personnel and a professional moving crew. "Miss Navarro," he said with a slight nod. "Mr. Ricci sent us to assist with your relocation." Elise looked at her tiny apartment, the place she'd run to when she'd fled Brandon, the place that had never quite felt safe. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's do this." The move happened with startling efficiency. Within 2 hours, her entire life was packed into boxes and loaded into a truck. Nico's team handled everything professionally, efficiently, almost militarily. Elise sat in the back of the Mercedes, watching her old life disappear in the rearview mirror. And driving toward, what? Safety? Danger? Both? When they arrived at Matteo's townhouse, he was waiting in the doorway. Still dressed casually, dark jeans, a navy sweater that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. But there was something different in his expression. Relief, maybe. Or satisfaction that she'd actually come. "Elise," he said as she stepped out of the car. "Welcome." The movers carried her boxes inside like they weighed nothing. Matteo led her upstairs to a bedroom that was bigger than her entire old apartment. Hardwood floors. A massive bed with soft linens. A sitting area with a comfortable chair and reading lamp. French doors that opened onto a small balcony overlooking the garden. And an ensuite bathroom that looked like something from a spa. "This is yours," Matteo said. "The door locks from the inside. Only you have the key. I won't enter without permission." Elise turned to him, overwhelmed. "This is too much. This is the minimum you deserve." Matteo gestured to the bedroom. "Take today to settle in. Tomorrow we'll discuss logistics, the social events, the public appearances, the story we'll tell people." The story. How we met. How long we've been together. The details that make it believable. His expression softened. "But today, just breathe. You're safe here, Elise. I promise you that." And despite everything, the danger, the insanity, the fact that she barely knew this man, Elise believed him. That evening, Matteo knocked softly on her door. "Come in," Elise called. He entered carrying a tray with tea and small pastries, not from his hotel, she noted. From a local bakery. "I thought you might be hungry," he said. They sat on her balcony as the sun set over the city, drinking tea and eating pastries, and talked about everything and nothing. He told her about his favorite books. She told him about her culinary school disasters. He made her laugh, describing his security team's attempts to use social media. She made him smile, talking about the time she accidentally set off the fire alarm making creme brulee. And somewhere in that conversation, sitting on her balcony in the golden light, Elise realized something terrifying. She liked him. Not as a benefactor. Not as a protector. As a person. And that was more dangerous than any contract they'd signed. But Elise didn't know, couldn't know, as she laughed at Matteo's stories and felt something warm bloom in her chest, that this arrangement, this fake relationship, was about to become the most real thing either of them had ever felt. And someone else was watching from the shadows. Someone with frost blue eyes and a predator's smile. Someone who looked at Elise not as a person, but as the perfect weapon to destroy Matteo Ricci. The war was coming, and Elise was about to be caught in the crossfire. The first night Elise stood beside Matteo at a public event, every head turned. But only one man looked at her like a possession he planned to steal. His name was Viktor Morozov, and he was about to make Elise understand that in Matteo's world, love, even fake love, was the deadliest weapon of all. 3 weeks. That's how long Elise had been living in Matteo's townhouse before she understood the true price of safety. The first week had been surreal, adjusting to the space, the security, the quiet luxury of a life without fear. Nico became a constant, silent presence. The household staff treated her with polite respect. And Matteo. Matteo was surprisingly easy to live with. He was gone most days, business, meetings, phone calls conducted in rapid Italian that Elise couldn't follow. But in the evenings, they had dinner together, talked about their days, slowly built something that felt like friendship, or maybe something more. Elise tried not to think about the way her pulse jumped when he smiled, the way she found herself waiting for his footsteps in the hall, the way his rare laughter made her feel like she'd accomplished something important. This is fake, she reminded herself constantly. This is business. But it was getting harder to remember. The second week, Matteo introduced her to his stylist, a woman named Isabel who took one look at Elise's wardrobe and declared it charming but inadequate for our purposes. Our purposes meant transforming Elise into someone who belonged on Matteo Ricci's arm. Dresses that cost more than her old monthly rent. Shoes that made her legs look endless. Jewelry that was tasteful but expensive. Hair and makeup tutorials until Elise could recreate the looks herself. Remember, Isabel said, applying lipstick with expert precision, you're not trying to look like everyone else. You're trying to look like yourself, just elevated. Matteo chose you for your authenticity. Don't lose that. Elise stared at her reflection. She looked like someone from a magazine. Someone confident. Someone who belonged in Matteo's world. Someone she almost didn't recognize. The third week, Matteo told her they were going public. There's a gallery opening tomorrow night, he said over dinner. Contemporary art. Very exclusive. It'll be our first public appearance together. Elise's stomach flipped. Already. The sooner we establish the relationship, the sooner Brandon gets the message. Matteo's expression softened. But if you're not ready. No, I'm ready. Liar, her mind whispered. You're terrified. But she wasn't about to back out now. The gallery was in a converted warehouse in the arts district, all exposed brick, dramatic lighting, and people who looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines. Elise wore a midnight blue dress that hugged her curves before flowing to her knees. Simple diamond earrings Matteo had insisted she borrow. Hair swept up in an elegant twist. And when Matteo appeared at the bottom of the townhouse stairs in his tuxedo, his dark eyes traveling over her appreciatively, Elise forgot how to breathe. You look stunning, he said quietly. You clean up pretty well yourself. His lips curved. Shall we? He offered his arm. Elise took it, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric. This is fake, she reminded herself. This is. Matteo's hand covered hers on his arm, warm and steady. Breathe, Elise. You're going to be perfect. The car ride was quiet. Nico drove with his usual focused efficiency. Elise watched the city lights blur past, her heart hammering. What do I say to people? She asked suddenly. The truth. That you're a pastry chef. That we met at the hotel. That I pursued you relentlessly until you agreed to have coffee with me. Matteo smiled slightly. People love a romance. Is that the story we're going with? It's close enough to the truth, isn't it? Their eyes met. Too close, Elise thought. The gallery was already crowded when they arrived. Champagne flowed. Contemporary art hung on exposed brick walls, some beautiful, some confusing, all expensive. And the moment Elise stepped through the doors on Matteo's arm, she felt it. Every single person staring. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. Is that Matteo Ricci? Who is she? I've never seen him with anyone before. She's gorgeous. Where did she come from? Matteo's hand moved to the small of her back, possessive, protective, unmistakably claiming. Ignore them, he murmured against her ear. Focus on me. Easier said than done when she could feel dozens of eyes tracking their every move. But Matteo moved through the crowd with easy confidence, introducing Elise to art dealers, collectors, business associates. His hand never left her back. His attention never wavered. To anyone watching, they looked completely enamored. And the terrifying part? It didn't feel like acting. They were admiring a particularly striking abstract painting when Elise felt it. A prickling on the back of her neck. The sensation of being watched. Not the casual curiosity of the crowd. Something sharper. Predatory. She turned slightly, and met a pair of frost blue eyes across the gallery. A man stood near the bar, staring directly at her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. He was tall, lean, with platinum blonde hair slicked back and features that were handsome in a cold, serpentine way. He wore a white suit that should have looked ridiculous, but somehow made him more striking. And he was smiling, like a snake that had spotted prey. Mateo followed her gaze. She felt him tense, his hand tightening slightly on her waist. "Who is that?" Elise asked quietly. "Victor Morozov." Mateo's voice was cold, controlled, but underneath, she heard steel. "My rival, and a very dangerous man. Should we leave?" "No, that would show weakness." Mateo turned her to face him, his expression softening as he looked at her. To anyone watching, it would look romantic, intimate. "Listen to me carefully, Elise. Victor is going to approach us. He's going to say things designed to unsettle you. Ignore him. Let me handle it." "Mateo. Trust me." Before she could respond, a smooth voice interrupted. "Mateo. How delightful to see you actually enjoying yourself for once." Victor Morozov had crossed the gallery with predatory grace. Up close, he was even more unsettling, those frost blue eyes sharp and calculating, his smile charming but empty. "Victor," Mateo said coolly, "I didn't realize you appreciated contemporary art. I appreciate beauty in all its forms." Victor's gaze slid to Elise, traveling over her slowly, deliberately. "And you, my dear, are exquisite. Victor Morozov." He extended a hand. Elise glanced at Mateo, who gave the slightest nod. She shook Victor's hand briefly. His skin was cool. His grip lingered just a fraction too long. "Elise Navarro," she said. "Navarro." Victor's smile widened. "And how did you and Mateo meet?" "I work at his hotel." "Ah, how democratic of you, Mateo. Dating the staff." The words dripped with subtle condescension. Mateo's expression didn't change, but Elise felt the dangerous stillness in him, like a panther about to strike. "Elise is a talented pastry chef," Mateo said evenly. "And my personal life is none of your concern." "Of course not." Victor's gaze returned to Elise. "Though I must warn you, Miss Navarro, Mateo's world is not kind to outsiders. I'd hate to see you get hurt." "Is that a threat?" Elise asked before she could stop herself. Victor's eyebrows rose. "A threat? Goodness, no. Simply concern for your well-being. You seem like a nice girl. I'd hate for you to get caught in the crossfire of business disagreements." "That's enough," Mateo said quietly. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Victor held up his hands in mock surrender. "Merely making conversation. Enjoy your evening." He walked away, but not before giving Elise one last lingering look that made her feel like she needed a shower. "I don't like him," Elise whispered. "No one does." Mateo's hand returned to her back, guiding her toward the exit. "We're leaving." "But now, Elise." Something in his tone brooked no argument. The car ride back was silent. Mateo stared out the window, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. "What did I do wrong?" Elise asked finally. His head whipped toward her. "What? Nothing. You were perfect." "Then why are you angry?" "I'm not angry at you." Mateo's expression was turbulent. "I'm angry that Victor saw you, noticed you, spoke to you." "Why does that matter?" Mateo was quiet for a long moment. "Because Victor Morozov doesn't do anything without a reason. And if he's interested in you, it's not because he finds you attractive. It's because he's trying to figure out how to use you against me." Ice slid down Elise's spine. "Use me how?" "However he can." Mateo turned to face her fully. "Listen to me, Elise. Victor is not like Brandon. Brandon is a bully, cruel, possessive, but ultimately small. Victor is a predator. He's intelligent, connected, and completely ruthless. He doesn't just want to hurt his enemies. He wants to destroy them. And I'm a weapon he can use to destroy you," Elise finished quietly. "Potentially." "Should we end this? The arrangement?" "No. The word was immediate. Fierce. Absolutely not. Elise blinked at the vehemence in his voice. Mateo's expression softened. Ending it now would make you vulnerable again. Brandon would resurface. And Victor would know he'd gotten to me. His hand found hers in the darkness. You're safer with me than without me, Elise. I promise you that. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. Neither of them pulled away. Over the next week, something shifted between them. Mateo became more protective, more present. He started working from home more often, claiming it was more efficient, but Elise suspected he just wanted to be nearby. They had breakfast together every morning, dinner every evening. They talked about everything: books, food, childhood memories, dreams for the future. Mateo supported her bakery plans in subtle ways, introducing her to real estate agents, sending her links to commercial kitchen equipment, asking her opinion on neighborhood locations. This one has good foot traffic, he'd say, showing her listings on his tablet. But this one has better parking. You don't have to do this, Elise would protest. I want to. And the terrifying part? She believed him. 2 weeks after the gallery opening, Elise woke to Mateo's phone buzzing insistently on his nightstand. Wait, his nightstand? She sat up, confused, then realized she'd fallen asleep on the living room couch while they'd been watching a movie together. Mateo must have carried her to. No, she was still in the living room. But Mateo was asleep beside her, his jacket off, his tie loosened, one arm draped protectively over her waist. His phone buzzed again. Mateo's eyes opened immediately, the alertness of someone used to crisis. He glanced at the screen. His expression darkened. What is it? Elise asked. Nico. He answered the call. Talk to me. Elise couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Mateo's face go from concern to furious to something that looked like fear. He ended the call and was on his feet in seconds. Get dressed, he said. Now. What's happening? Sofia Almeida has been kidnapped. Elise's blood ran cold. Who? Daughter of a political ally. 17 years old. Taken from her home 3 hours ago. That's terrible, but what does it have to do with? Mateo turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her words die. The kidnappers left a message, he said quietly. They said, we know about the girl Mateo keeps in his house. The world tilted. They're talking about me, Elise whispered. Yes. But I'm not, we're not, this is fake. They don't know that. Mateo's hands cupped her face, forcing her to focus on him. Listen to me very carefully. This is Victor's move. He's showing me that he knows about you, that he can get to you if he wants. This is a warning. What do we do? Mateo's expression was harder than she'd ever seen it. You're leaving. Tonight. Nico is preparing a safe house. You'll stay there with full security until this is resolved. No. The word surprised them both. Elise. No. She stood her ground. Running didn't work with Brandon. I'm not running from Victor either. This is different. Is it? Or am I just trading one cage for another? Elise's voice shook, but she didn't back down. You said I was safe with you. You said this arrangement would protect me. If I run now, it proves Victor is right. I'm a weakness. I'm a weapon he can use against you. Mateo stared at her. Do you understand what you're saying? I'm saying I'm staying. I'm saying we face this together. I'm saying... Elise took a shaky breath. I'm saying I trust you. Something profound shifted in Mateo's expression. Elise. His phone buzzed again. Another call. This time when he answered, his voice was pure ice. Victor. A pause. You have 5 seconds to tell me where Sofia Almeida is, or I will burn your entire operation to the ground. Another pause. Mateo's face darkened. You're right. She is beautiful. And if you so much as look in her direction again, you won't live long enough to regret it. He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Nico. Lock down the house. Full security protocols. No one gets in or out without my authorization. And find Sofia Almeida. I don't care what it takes. He hung up and turned to Elise. "You're not leaving?" he asked quietly. "I'm not leaving." "Then you're not leaving my sight either." The next 72 hours were a nightmare. Elise stayed in Mateo's study while he worked the phones, coordinating with security, allies, contacts in the police department. She watched him transform from the man who smiled at her over breakfast into something harder, colder. A man who could make people disappear. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt protected. On the second day, a package arrived. Nico brought it to Mateo, his expression grim. Inside was a single photograph. Elise from the gallery opening. Beautiful. Smiling. Unaware she was being watched. And written on the back in elegant script. "She's lovely, Mateo. It would be a shame if something happened to her." Mateo's hands shook as he crumpled the photo. "He's testing me," he said quietly. "Seeing if I'll break. If I'll hand you over to save Sophia." "Will you?" Elise asked. Mateo's dark eyes met hers. "I will find Sophia. I will make Victor pay for taking her. But I will not sacrifice you, Elise. Not for anyone." And the way he said it, fierce, final, absolute, made Elise realize something terrifying. This wasn't fake anymore. Not for him. And not for her. On the third day, Mateo stormed into the study, exhausted but triumphant. "We found her. Sophia's safe. Victor's people are in custody." Elise sagged with relief. "Thank God." Mateo crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. Not gently. Not carefully. Desperately. Like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to humanity. "I was terrified," he admitted against her hair. "Not of Victor. Not of the war he was starting. Of losing you." Elisa's heart hammered. "Mateo. I know this is supposed to be fake. I know we have an arrangement. But Elise." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "I can't fake this anymore. I care about you. Genuinely. And if that changes things, if that breaks our deal, I understand. But I needed you to know." Elise stared at him. This dangerous, beautiful man who'd given her safety and dreams and looked at her like she was worth protecting. "It's not fake for me either," she whispered. And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was desperate, claiming real, everything the arrangement was supposed to not be. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mateo rested his forehead against hers. "Victor won't stop," he said quietly. "This was just his opening move. Then we face him together." "Together," Mateo agreed. But neither of them knew that Victor was already planning his next move. And this time, he wouldn't just threaten. This time, he'd take. Because in Mateo's world, the deadliest weapon wasn't guns or money or power. It was love. And Victor Morozov was about to weaponize it. Elise thought she was leaving Mateo's home temporarily. She didn't know she was leaving the old version of her life forever. Because what came next, the kidnapping, the rescue, the moment everything shattered and reformed, would prove that sometimes the most dangerous deals are the ones we make with our hearts. And Matteo Ricci never made a deal he didn't intend to keep. Let me tell you how it ended. And how it began. The attack came exactly 12 days after Matteo and Elise admitted the truth. 12 days of pretending nothing had changed while everything had. They still had their own bedrooms. Still maintained the appearance of a business arrangement. But now when Matteo's hand found hers at dinner, it wasn't for show. When she fell asleep on his shoulder watching movies, he didn't pull away. The lines had blurred completely. And Victor Morozov was counting on that. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Elise was in the kitchen. She'd been experimenting with recipes, planning menu items for the bakery that was slowly becoming more real. Matteo was in his study on a conference call. Nico was doing his evening perimeter check. The first sign something was wrong was the power going out. Not just in the townhouse. The entire block went dark. Elise. Matteo's voice, sharp with concern, from the study. "I'm here," she called back. But before she could move, she heard it. Glass shattering. Multiple entry points. The emergency system blared to life. Alarms, red emergency lights, the automated voice announcing intruder alert. Intruder alert. Matteo appeared in the kitchen doorway, gun in hand. Gun in hand. Elise had never seen him armed before. "Get behind me," he ordered. She didn't argue. The sound of footsteps, multiple sets, coordinated, professional. These weren't random thieves. This was planned. "Nico." Matteo barked into his phone. "Status." A pause. His face went pale. "Nico's down. Not dead, but down." He grabbed Elisa's hand. "We're going to the panic room. Now." They ran through the darkened house, emergency lights casting everything in harsh red shadows. Behind them, the footsteps grew closer. Matteo yanked open what looked like a closet door, but behind it was reinforced steel. A biometric scanner. He pressed his hand against it. The door began to slide open. "Inside," he commanded. Elise stumbled through, and hands grabbed her from behind. She screamed. Matteo spun, but not fast enough. 3 men in tactical gear had appeared from another entrance. One had Elise, arm around her throat. The others had guns pointed at Matteo. "Drop it, Ricci," one of them said. Matteo's eyes were ice. Murder. Pure, cold fury. But slowly, he lowered his gun. "Let her go," he said quietly. "This is between Victor and me." "That's where you're wrong." The man holding Elise tightened his grip, making her gasp. "She's the whole point." And then everything went dark. Elise woke to the sound of dripping water. Her head throbbed. Her wrists were bound. She was sitting in a chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse, all concrete and rust and shadows. And across from her, lounging in a chair like he was holding court, was Victor Morozov. "Welcome back, Miss Navarro," he said with that snake smile. "I apologize for the rough transport. My men can be enthusiastic." Elisa's heart hammered. "Where's Matteo?" "Alive. For now." Victor leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to make a video for me. You're going to tell Matteo that you're safe, but you'll only stay that way if he gives me what I want. He'll kill you for this. Perhaps. But first, he'll give me access to his shipping routes, his business contacts, his financial networks. Everything I need to finally surpass him." Victor's smile widened. "You see, Miss Navarro, Matteo's fatal weakness has always been his humanity. His father never would have fallen for a woman. But Matteo? Matteo actually cares. And caring makes him vulnerable." "You're wrong," Elise said, surprised by the strength in her voice. "Caring makes him dangerous. Because now he has something to protect. And Matteo doesn't lose." Victor's expression darkened. "We'll see." Meanwhile, across the city, Matteo Ricci was burning his world down to find her. "I don't care who you have to pay," he snarled into his phone. "I don't care what laws we break. Find her. Now." Nico, back on his feet despite a concussion, coordinated with every contact they had. Police. Private investigators. People who operated in the shadows where the law didn't reach. 8 hours. That's how long Elise had been gone. 8 hours of Matteo imagining every terrible thing Victor could do to her. 8 hours of systematic rage unlike anything he'd ever felt. "Boss," Nico said quietly. "We got something." Traffic cameras picked up the van. They're holed up in a warehouse in the industrial district. Matteo was on his feet instantly. "How many?" 6 guards. Victor. And Elise. "Get our people. All of them. We're going in." "Matteo." Nico's voice was careful. "If we go in heavy, Victor might." "I know." Matteo's voice was hollow. "That's why I'm going in alone first." "That's suicide." "Then it's suicide." Matteo checked his gun, his movements precise and cold. "I'm not losing her, Nico. I don't care what it costs." Matteo entered the warehouse alone. No backup. No weapons visible. Just him, walking through the shadows like a man with nothing left to lose. "Victor," he called. "I'm here. Let her go." Lights flared on, momentarily blinding. And there she was. Elise, bound to a chair, but alive. Awake. When she saw him, relief and terror warred on her face. Mateo, don't, she started. Victor appeared behind her, gun pressed to her temple. Drop any weapons you have, Victor ordered. Mateo complied, removing a knife from his boot, a small pistol from his ankle holster, and laying them on the ground. Now step forward. Slowly. Mateo did. Good. Victor's smile was triumphant. You know what I want, Mateo. Your shipping routes. Your contacts. Your entire network. Give it to me, and she lives. If I give you that, I'm dead within a month anyway. Perhaps. But she'll be alive. Mateo's eyes met Elisa's. She was shaking her head minutely, mouthing, "Don't do it." But Mateo had already made his choice. "Fine," he said. "Let her go first." "Do you think I'm stupid?" What happened next was pure chaos. The warehouse doors exploded inward, flashbangs, smoke grenades, Nico and a full tactical team storming in like an army. Victor's men scattered, returning fire. In the confusion, Mateo lunged. He hit Victor like a freight train, knocking the gun away from Elisa's head. They went down hard, fists flying, brutal and vicious. Elise threw herself sideways, chair and all, getting clear of the fight. Nico appeared at her side, cutting her bonds. "Miss Navarro, we need to help Mateo." But Mateo didn't need help. He was winning. Every punch landed with systematic precision. Every move calculated. This wasn't a man fighting. This was a man destroying. Victor tried to reach for his gun. Mateo kicked it away and grabbed him by the throat, slamming him against a support pillar hard enough to crack the concrete. "You threatened her," Mateo said, his voice cold and empty. "You put your hands on her. You tried to use her against me." "Mateo," Victor choked. "I should kill you. Then do it." For a moment, Elise thought he would. Mateo's hands tightened on Victor's throat. His eyes were empty, cold. A killer's eyes. "Mateo," Elise called softly. He stilled. "Don't," she said. "He's not worth it." Something in her voice reached him. Mateo released Victor, who collapsed to the floor, gasping. "You're right," Mateo said quietly. "He's not worth becoming the monster everyone thinks I am." He turned to Nico. "Call the police. Give them everything. Victor's kidnapping operation. His trafficking networks. Every illegal thing we have on him. Let the law handle it." Then he crossed to Elise and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest and finally let herself cry. The aftermath took weeks. Victor was arrested. The evidence Mateo provided was overwhelming. Police found not just proof of Elisa's kidnapping, but a network of other crimes. Victor would be going to prison for a very long time. The media coverage was intense. Mateo Ricci, rumored crime boss, actually the hero who brought down a real trafficking operation. The headlines rewrote his reputation overnight. And through it all, Mateo never left Elisa's side. "I'm okay," she kept telling him. "I know," he'd say, "but I'm not." 3 days after the rescue, he found her on the balcony of her room, staring at the city. "I was thinking," Mateo said quietly, "that our arrangement is over." Elisa's heart dropped. "What? 6 months. That was the deal. It's been 4, but given the circumstances." "I don't want it to be over," Elise interrupted. Mateo stilled. "What?" She turned to face him. "I know this started as fake. I know we had a business arrangement. But Mateo, somewhere along the way, this became real for me. You became real for me." "Elise. I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking for forever. I'm just asking, can we try? For real this time." Mateo crossed the space between them and cupped her face in his hands. "I fell in love with you," he said simply. "Somewhere between the elevator and the pasta dinners and watching you plan your dream bakery in my study. I fell in love with you, and I don't want to fake this anymore either." "Is that a yes?" "That's a please stay. Not because of the arrangement. Not because of the deal. But because I can't imagine this house without you in it." Elise stood on her toes and kissed him. And this time, there was no hesitation. No pretense. Just truth. 18 months later. Elise stood in front of her bakery, staring at the sign above the door. Navarro's Hearth. Her dream. Real. Tangible. The space was perfect. Large windows letting in natural light, exposed brick walls, a display case filled with pastries she'd created. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air, and the line of customers stretched around the block. "You're doing it again," a familiar voice said. Elise turned. Matteo stood there in jeans and a casual jacket, holding 2 coffees, looking at her with that expression that still made her heart skip. "Doing what?" "Staring like you can't believe it's real." "I can't," Elise admitted. 6 months ago, I was running from Brandon, terrified and broke. Now I have this. She gestured at the bakery, at the life she'd built. "You earned it," Matteo said, handing her a coffee. "Every bit of it. With your help. I provided funding and connections. You provided the talent, the vision, the hard work." He pulled her close. "This is yours, Elise. Completely." She leaned into him, feeling safe in a way she'd never thought possible. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." The bell above the door chimed. Kayla poked her head out. "Boss, the wedding cake consultation is here." "Coming." Elise called. But before she could move, Matteo caught her hand. "There's something I want to ask you," he said. "What?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elise's breath caught. "I know we started with a contract," Matteo said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "I know it was supposed to be temporary, fake, business. But Elise, you're the realest thing that's ever happened to me." He dropped to one knee right there on the sidewalk. People passing by stopped, pulled out phones. Elise didn't care. "Will you marry me?" Matteo asked. "For real this time. No contracts. No arrangements. Just us." Elise's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that made the gathering crowd cheer. 6 months later, Elise Ricci, she'd taken his name, loved the way it sounded, stood behind the counter of Navarro's Hearth, decorating a wedding cake. The shop was thriving. They'd expanded twice. She'd hired staff, started offering baking classes for kids on weekends, just like she'd dreamed. The bell chimed. "We're closing in 5. Elise looked up and smiled. "Hi." Matteo leaned against the counter, stealing a chocolate croissant like he did every day. "How's my beautiful wife?" he asked. "Covered in buttercream and happy." He came around the counter and pulled her close, despite her protests about getting frosting on his suit. "I have a surprise for you," he said. "What kind of surprise?" "The kind where I cleared your schedule for the next 2 weeks, booked us a villa in Tuscany, and plan to spend every single day reminding you how much I love you." Elise laughed. "Matteo, I can't just leave the shop. Kayla is more than capable of running things. And you, my love, deserve a honeymoon." "We already had a honeymoon." "That was 3 months ago. I'm greedy. I want another one." She looked up at this man, this dangerous, beautiful man who'd given her safety, dreams, and love beyond measure. "Okay," she said, "but only if you promise to take me to your family's vineyard." "Deal." That night, as they drove home through the city that had brought them together, Elise thought about how far she'd come. From a terrified woman running from her ex, to the owner of a successful bakery, to the wife of a man who'd once seemed untouchable but had let her in completely. "What are you thinking about?" Matteo asked, his hand finding hers. "About elevators," Elise said. He laughed. "Elevators." "About how everything changed because a service corridor was flooded. About how I crashed into you and you didn't let me fall. About how the worst night of my life became the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to me." Matteo brought her hand to his lips. "I think about that too. About how I was going to a business meeting and ended up finding you instead." "Do you regret it? The danger, the complications, Victor?" "Not for a single second." Matteo's dark eyes met hers. "You're worth everything, Elise. You always were." And as they drove through the night, Elise realized she finally believed that. She was worth protecting, worth loving, Worth everything. Because sometimes, the most dangerous deals are the ones we make to save ourselves. And sometimes, those deals transform into something real. Something beautiful. Something worth fighting for. And to think, it all began with a box of pastries, a dangerous elevator ride, and a man who looked at Elise like she was worth protecting. If you loved this story, let me know what part made your heart race. Was it the elevator? The Victor confrontation? The proposal? And remember, the best love stories are the ones where both people save each other. But before you go, I need to tell you something. I made a bet with my mom. I told her this story channel where I pour my heart into creating these narratives for you, would reach 1,000 subscribers before my next birthday. She laughed. Not in a mean way, but in that oh honey, that's ambitious way that moms do. And I said, Mom, just watch. The people who love these stories? They're loyal. They're amazing. They'll help me prove you wrong. So here's where you come in. If Elise and Matteo's story made you feel something, if it made your heart race, if you stayed until the end, if you're already imagining what happens next in their lives, please hit that subscribe button. It takes 2 seconds, but it would mean the world to me. Not just because I want to win this bet, though I really, really do. But because every subscriber tells me that these stories matter. That the hours I spend writing, the late nights perfecting every cliffhanger, the emotional beats I carefully craft, they're worth it. My birthday is coming up faster than I'd like to admit. And right now, we're not quite at 1,000 yet. But I believe in this community. I believe in you. So if you enjoyed this story, if you want more dramatic romances, more dangerous heroes, more happily ever afters that feel earned, subscribe. Please. Help me prove my mom wrong. And who knows? Maybe I'll tell you the story of what happens when I actually hit that goal. Spoiler, it might involve me making her listen to the entire Elise and Matteo saga while I gloat. Just a little. Until next time.